remarkable events to occur in October 2016. Can the 1927 novel predict soon-to-occur events in 2016? In 2014, I began an independent study of the stock market. Having studied methodologies, mythologies, systems, numerologies and such for decades, I was satisfied there weren't any methods I could study or purchase that gave more than an edge to trading. Yet, I'd seen too many coincidences. Vastly improbable stock market tops and bottoms separated by recognizable time periods. I believed in order, not randomness or chaos, but without knowing that order. So I started a blog on Google, just for myself at first, to keep a record of the coincidences and to look for answers. Soon, I became enthralled by the work of a stock speculator who I had studied in 1974 while in college, W D Gann, in his 1927 novel, The Tunnel Thru the Air. For 2 years I have been increasingly obsessed with Mr. Gann and the tunnel to the extent I visited his gravesite 3 times in 2015. Each visit raised greater questions about the geometries, symbols and mysteries of his final resting place. Mr. Gann's final resting place is of great American significance. The Greenwood Cemetery is one of the largest cemeteries in the United States, having approximately 1/2 million interments. Its property is located at the site of one of the first skirmishes of the first organized battle of the Revolutionary War, the 1776 Battle of Brooklyn. With your back to the face of Mr. Gann's gravestone, thus facing west, your line of vision is directed to the financial district of Lower Manhattan. Glancing left of southwest about 30 degrees in winter, you might barely see the Statue of Liberty, dedicated in 1886. Though impossible to see, Times Square is a full 90 degrees or due north from where you are standing. In the summer, a great tree illuminates one's vision of Manhattan. In the fall and winter, one can just make out the spire and upper floors of One World Trade Center. What might have been the view on September 11, 2001, I cannot help but wonder. On the trunk of the great tree, about 6 feet high, there hangs a stainless steel medallion, likely indicating it was planted in 1942 and possibly subject to an endowment for its care of that same year. Symbolically, the Tree of Life, perhaps. 1942 is the year W D Gann's wife, Sadie Gann, passed. Unnatural? I thought so on the first visit, but that was quickly dwarfed by the ever-increasing intrigue of that place. Over time, I became convinced Mr. Gann was gifted with foresight. It now seems something more than foresight, but I get far ahead of myself. Let's boil it down to a simple observation, an anagram from his final resting place. I've read an anagram often gets at the truth of the thing. An author, wishing to present a veiled truth, might wish to create an anagram that an aware recipient would decipher, ponder and understand. This is the picture of W D and Sadie H. Gann's gravestone at midday on the summer solstice. Oddly, the gravestone is etched with the informal name of Sadie H. Gann, whose given name was Sarah H. Gann. In contrast, Mr. Gann's formal name, William D. Gann, is on the stone, whereas he referred to himself as W. D. Gann, a formal name mixed with a casual name. Some thought went into this mix, it would seem. With this contradiction noted, the two names are an anagram, as you can derive and prove to yourself. Why? Why would the prophet will his and his wife's death? W. D. Gann, the speculator. W. D. Gann, whose life spanned from 1878 to 1955, is a name recognized by traders worldwide, even in this 21st century. Mr. Gann claimed his knowledge of markets and math and science were derived from his study of the Bible. His many books on trading continue to be sold and studied by novice and experienced traders alike. Newsletters charge substantial rates for their expert interpretation of Mr. Gann's methods applied to current markets. A substantial readership exists for persons who claim they have the secret of W. D. Gann. We have titles including Unveiled, Secrets, Demystified, Revealed, and the list goes on and on. Authors believing they understand the methods and systems of W. D. Gann, arguably none so proving by demonstration in markets or by peer acclamation. But Mr. Gann proved and documented his dominance of the market in 1909. In the December 1909 issue of the Ticker and Investment Digest, several stories of his uncanny market prowess are recounted, but none more convincingly than his 25 days of trading. 286 transactions in 25 trading days with only 22 losses. Before the advent of computers and with an independent observer watching his every trade as he walked the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, in real time, Mr. Gann recorded 264 winners and only 22 losses. Some detractors from the W. D. Gann legend claim Mr. Gann did not amass appreciable wealth in his life, as if the argument is closed. The argument is hollow because it assumes Mr. Gann's objective, or that of any person, is to amass incomprehensible wealth. The detractors, however, will not address the vastly improbable record of the 25 days of trading. What is the probability that a person, however expert that person might be, could record a 92% winner rate in the stock market? After all, according to our modern understanding, the stock market is a statistical, random walk. A random distribution of trades between winners and losers would be 143 wins and 143 losses. Flip a coin 286 times and see how long it takes to get 264 winners with only 22 losers. Is it possible a trader can enter 286 transactions in 25 days and have only 22 losses? The Tunnel Through the Air. Self-published in 1927 by a company controlled by W. D. Gann, many researchers believe the first printing of the tunnel to be encoded by methods that rely on the author's formatting of the typeset layout. Mr. Gann tells us up front in the foreword the book contains veiled messages and a valuable secret. Misspelled words, a misnumbered chapter, numerous scriptures from the Bible are all suspected methods. Some have believed the length of chapters relative to the whole of the book was a method of encoding time cycles. Indeed, there are encoded messages, but few will have an inkling of the greater context of the tunnel because they restrict themselves to secrets of market speculation. Perhaps, for that reason, important veiled messages have not been uncovered by persons seeking personal enrichment over knowledge and truth. Not only does the foreword to the tunnel speak of a secret and valuable, veiled message, it claims that the book is, in part, based on events that will happen in the future. The Tunnel is the story of Robert Gordon, from the time of his birth in 1906 to the end of a fictional war in August of 1932. At his birth, his mother is still grieving the loss of Robert's older brother in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, an event notably included in the first paragraph of the tunnel. Under his mother's tutelage, Robert becomes a student of the Bible and excels in math and sciences, He also becomes an inventor and develops his understanding of the mathematics and cycles of the stock market. Robert attributes his knowledge to his study of the Bible. Robert's love interest is Marie Stanton, who disappears on the eve of their elopement wedding and 4 days short of his 21st birthday. She leaves a mysterious note. Robert seeks advice from friends, clairvoyants, astrologers and a spiritualist without substantial success. Marie's mysterious letter, written the morning of her disappearance, is reprised 7 times in the tunnel as if to drive home a biblical point familiar to many. Robert's professional career involved stock and commodity speculation, inventions that were decades ahead of their time, and military leadership. He had foreseen a Great War in the air in which critical inventions would give the United States a pivotal edge against the Allied enemy. His speculation was not for personal gain alone, but to fund his inventions that he knew his country would need to win the predicted war. Among the many inventions envisioned in 1927 now present in our time are wireless phones, encryption that makes wireless phones secure, drones including pilotless military planes, laser rays, stationary or hovering aircraft and more. Familiar concepts in the 21st century, but hardly so in 1927. Predictions. The battle plan of the Allied enemy in the Great War in the Air was comprised of 3 major campaigns. First, a Pacific Coast campaign destroys Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland and Seattle. The second campaign begins in the Gulf of Mexico up the Mississippi River from New Orleans to St. Louis, the latter becoming a station from which to attack and destroy the great city of Chicago. Unlike the first 2 campaigns, the third and final campaign is won by the United States under the leadership of Robert Gordon, now the Supreme Commander. As a side, the military term, Supreme Commander, was not used in the history of military ranks until General Eisenhower was conferred in World War II. The third campaign included United States victories at northeastern cities including Detroit, Boston, New York and Washington, D.C. To seal the United States victory, Robert travels around the world in 7 days and destroys all of the great buildings of those countries comprising the Allied enemy. The remarkable events of October 2016 derive from the first major campaign of the fictional war. The first campaign is, in turn, comprised of the Battle of the Pacific Fleet and Los Angeles, the assault along the Rio Grande, the destruction of San Francisco and, somewhat later, the capture and destruction of Portland and Seattle. In the foreword, Mr. Gann states the tunnel's objectives as providing an interesting story, teaching a moral lesson and demonstrating the value of science, foreknowledge and preparedness. Foreknowledge of what time period? In veiled meaning, Mr. Gann is warning those of us living in the age of the 266th Pope. Saint Malachy, some believe to have been Nostradamus, predicted the nature of all popes from his time to the 266th Pope. Saint Malachy indicated the 266th Pope, widely accepted to be Pope Francis elected in 2013, would be the last pope, and the tunnel recounts these prophetic visions on page 82. After the election of the 266th Pope, but when after? What events and where? Encoded messages. Researchers will base an entire book on the decoding of a very minor aspect of W. D. Gann's work, on a word such as nature or its spelling permutations, or vibration, or meaningful geometric angles such as the 45 or 90-degree angles, a mathematic relation such as phi or pi, and so on. Mr. Gann used many methods in his encoding the tunnel. To understand and investigate one and ignore others is a tragic research mistake in my opinion. The whole cannot be understood by focusing on a single thread of intended information. In 88 years since the publication of the tunnel, not a single Gann expert noticed and published that the book is encoded with simple acrostic and tells tick letter words. Veiled words spelled by the conscious organization of words and lines of text to create encoded words out of the first and last letters of each line. And messages. Mr. Gann used methods as simple as ones designed to capture a reader's attention. He used complex methods having the most intricate symbolic or mathematic impact. Several methods might provide a starting point. Misspelled words and incorrectly used words. Symbolic images. Acrostic and tells tick encoded words. Mathematic devices. Structural devices. The W D Gann map of time. Pythagorean gematria. Reference to other fictional works providing meaning. Misspelled words and incorrectly used words. In our new century of terror events, what comes to mind when someone describes a 110-story building? Of course, it's the World Trade Center destroyed by, arguably, the primary event that led the United States on its path to war against terrorism. The tunnel, written in 1927, refers to a building primary to its story in Manhattan as the misspelled Huma-Huma building. It is referred to as the 110-story building, the Cedar. It is the site of the gigantic Battle of New York. Perhaps Huma-Huma is an error. W D Gann describes the great city of Chicago. Might these misspelled words lead to predictions, the former manifest in 2001, the latter predicted to occur in our imminent future? Symbolic images. We might think of the word cross as a geometric image or as the symbol of Christianity. A word, a geometric configuration, and an image of the crucifix, each connoting the other. An example of symbolism in the tunnel might include the rose. We find on page 37 of the tunnel the Rose of Charity. We find the symbolically unique, 5-petal rose at the upper corners of W D and Sadie Gann's gravestone. Many are aware that both the number 37 and the rose are prominently symbolic of Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. It would seem Mr. Gann was not only a Mason but a Rosicrucian. Rosicrucians who claimed they could foretell the future. Acrostic and tells tick encoded words. An acrostic letter is the first letter of a line, and a tells tick letter is the last letter of a line. Renaissance scientists and philosophers encoded text by manipulating how lines began and ended to spell words that an aware reader could isolate to spell words. Examples would include the simple acrostic words Tau and War found on pages 68 and 71 of the tunnel. How conspicuous to the attentive seeker is War in all caps? What if you found your name encoded in the tunnel? Would that capture your attention? What if you found 37 instances of your name encoded? Would that capture your attention? Mathematic devices. One such device found in the tunnel might be referred to as the Tau device. The Tau device mathematically and predictably relates distant elements to discover and prove their intended relation. The acrostic word Tau is an Eastern word for path. Finding the words path and war might suggest a missing word, to, that would construct the phrase path to war. The mathematic device would suggest the word to would be found spatially between Tau and war. And it is. The T of Tau falls on the 2699th line of the tunnel and the R falls on the 2860th line. Perfectly equidistant between those words is the word to. As the arrows indicate, deduct the line number of the first letter of Tau from the last letter of war, divide that interval of distance by 2 and add it to the first line of Tau, and you have, predictably, the word to. The Tau device predicts and it confirms the author's intended meaning. Yes, Mr. Gann intended for us to find the phrase, path to war. Structural devices. The W D Gann map of time. Researchers have proposed the line, page and chapter structure of the tunnel holds meaning regarding cycles in time about which Mr. Gann often wrote. Numbering the lines in the tunnel, given normal spacing conventions between paragraphs, page breaks, chapter breaks and such puts its vertical line length at 15,341 lines. Next, assigning two dates on a line and numbering the lines. The tunnel both in ascending and descending creates 61,364 chronologically sequenced dates or 168 years using 365.242 days per year. And 168 years is 1/15 of the biblical Great Week of 2,520 years. While this presentation is restricted in its ability to demonstrate the integrity of the map of time according to its derivation, a simple proof of its predictiveness involves the previously described Tau to war. Recalling that example, additional highlighting of lines and dates are added. On September 11, 2001, 2,977 innocent persons lost their lives in the World Trade Center terrorist attacks. Add the cumulative ascending line number, highlighted in yellow, to the ascending chapter number, highlighted in green, to arrive at 2,978. 2,978 is one greater than the number of innocent lives lost that day. The error can be explained. That number, 2,978, corresponds with the later of the two dates on line 2,699 or September 12, 2001. The number 2,977 corresponds with the day, September 11, 2001, that also appears on that line. The mathematic structure of W D Gann's map of time perfectly predicts the time and the number of innocent victims of the World Trade Center attacks. I'd be woefully remiss if I did not point out a mathematic property of the map of time. If you look at the tan highlighted date of April 3, 2031 in the above, you will notice it is on about the same line as the date September 11, 2001. Every time you see 9/11 or 4/3, they will appear on exactly the same line or one line off, the latter owing to leap years. That's a mathematic property. There's something else. Do you recognize the date April 3rd? It is the date Christ died, first derived by Isaac Newton as one of two dates it might have occurred based on astronomy and clues found in the Bible. It was later confirmed by other scholars as the only possible date. That date will always be opposite 9/11 in the map of time. Pythagorean gematria. Gematria represents methods of exchanging a letter for a numeric value and the reverse. Pythagoras is widely known for his teaching of the Pythagorean triangle, a great key to mathematic understanding. Lesser, he is known for teaching the relation of sound and mathematics according to the diatonic scale. And still lesser known, he is accredited with defining the relation of letters to numeric equivalence according to table of letter and number values. For example, the letters of the name James have the respective Pythagorean equivalents of 11451. Add the digits and you have 12. Reduce the 12 to a single digit, 1 plus 2, and the name number of James is 3. Somewhat in reverse, a crafter of a message might substitute a letter for a value. A very simple example. Reference to other fictional works providing meaning. The tunnel does not stand alone in creating predictions about our future, the era of the 266th Pope. It encodes several contemporary fictional works, two of which will be developed and proven in the following discussions: the movie Knowing and the movie San Andreas. We come to this point knowing encoding devices. This last device, a 1927 novel using contemporary movies as a device, is itself a claim of foresight. Again, it will be proven in the following two sections. Knowing the when. The 2009 apocalyptic movie, Knowing, written principally by Ryan Douglas Pearson, was identified and deeply encoded into the tunnel. The author's full name, the date range of the movie, and many of the key characters are found encoded in the tunnel in various ways. The most important example will prove Knowing having been foretold by W D Gann. There's a story here. Please watch the official trailer on YouTube for a background. How did I find the correlation of the date, September 11th, 2001, and the number of innocent deaths that occurred on that day discussed in the previous section regarding Tau to War? Weeks or months after having constructed, proved and explored the map of time, I was at a dead end. I could not prove its integrity to make it attractive for further study. I'd seen the movie, Knowing, many years earlier, but one day it became available on Netflix as I recall. I watched it again, and there it was, the answer to proving it the map of time predictive. The hero of the movie, Professor John Koestler, an MIT astrophysicist, stumbles onto a page of numbers that was buried in a time capsule at William Dawes Elementary School in Boston. Just a jumble of numbers. Somewhat inebriated and without anything otherwise to occupy his recently widowed life, the night October 13th, he jots some of the numbers on a chalkboard and subdivides them once, twice, 3 times with a slash. They end up reading, September 11th, 2996. He searches the internet and, in fact, 2,996 lives were lost on September 11th, 2001, inclusive of 19 terrorists. Professor Koestler spends all night verifying the map contained every great disaster occurring during the 50 years the map was buried in the time capsule. When I went to W D Gann's map of time, I found the number of innocent lives lost that day, which was 2,996 minus 19 terrorists, or 2,977 innocent lives. You have seen the demonstrated relation of the date, September 11, 2001 to the number 2977 in the previous section. W. D. Gann's map of time is predictive, and it is related to the movie Knowing by the very nature of the mechanism that proved the integrity of both the fictional map and the real map. Had I not watched the movie Knowing, I would not have sought to relate the date, September 11, 2001, to the number of innocent lives lost that day. They are the same methodologies, one published 82 years before the other was released. That number, 82, the page of the tunnel on which we find the 266th Pope. That very day I made the discovery, I wrote an extensive essay of my findings. And when I looked up, having drafted the essay, the date reflecting its publication on Google Blogger was September 11, 2015. That essay remains on the market time and price blog along with the date stamp. Now, a year after the discovery, the prediction of the movie Knowing, I believe the predictive quality of Knowing is its date range, the events of the 7 days of the movie. Knowing presents dates that are corroborated by several messages that correspond those same dates on map of time. The final event of Knowing, the destruction of the world, is not corroborated. In complete contrast, the tunnel states W. D. Gann's opinion, founded in the Bible, that the time of tribulation which Mr. Gann predicts will be shortened. San Andreas, the what and where. The 2015 action movie, San Andreas, is encoded into the tunnel through a combination of acrostic and tell-stick words that create a TOW device that confirms the intent of Mr. Gann to so include the movie. First, the characters and the nature and order of events. Ray Gaines is a Los Angeles Fire Department helicopter pilot first responder who is in the last stages of his separation from his wife, Emma. On the first day of the movie, an earthquake destroys the Hoover Dam and Ray is assigned to rescue operations the next day. While at a high-rise Los Angeles restaurant luncheon the next day at exactly 2:13 p.m. PST on exactly September 6th and during a cellular call between Ra and Emma, Los Angeles is hit by a great earthquake. Emma escapes to the restaurant's roof and is saved by Ray by a helicopter rescue. Exactly September 6th at 2:13 p.m. showing on Emma's cell phone the exact moment the Los Angeles earthquake strikes. There is one and only one date in the entire movie and it is prominently displayed. Remember that date and time because it will be the source of the most accurate prediction of a future event that has been made. It will be discussed later. At nearly the same time, their daughter, Blake, is returning to college in San Francisco. The earthquake originates at the Hoover Dam, runs westward to Los Angeles and then follows the San Andreas Fault from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Blake is trapped in San Francisco along with her two friends. Of course, Emma and Ray make a harrowing trip to San Francisco and do save their daughter and her two friends. In the final scene of San Andreas, the characters gaze over the San Francisco Bay over the destroyed Golden Gate Bridge. They self-congratulate one another on saving one another's lives. A tattered American flag is hung from the remains of the bridge and unfolds in the breeze. In response to Emma asking, "What now?" the larger-than-life Ray responds, "We rebuild." It is the prideful declaration of Isaiah 9:10 representing a theme of Rabbi Jonathan Cahn's 2010, The Harbinger. That same theme is also encoded in the tunnel. The camera transitions to a satellite shot of the region of the San Francisco Bay. The city of San Francisco is largely gone and the bay is enlarged to the extent it appears to be a river flowing southward. It is a charming scene, one perfect in its godlessness. San Andreas is encoded in the tunnel with the acrostic and tells-tick words of Ray and Emma, and mathematic proof is added using the tau device and the word Andreas. We find Ray spelled beginning on line 145 in the tunnel and Emma ending on line 12,218, yielding the midpoint of the interval according to the tau device of 6,181. On line 6,181 we find in close proximity the letters that spell the word Andreas. Two simple and very clearly spelled words, seemingly related, but their lack of proximity argues for their randomness. Dispelling the randomness is the crafted mathematic proof of dividing the distance between them and inserting a third confirming word, Andreas. This device and message was intended. If the lines surrounding predicted line 6,181 were expanded and all the acrostic and tells-tick letters were considered an anagram to be solved, the following message is constructed. A chilling message. The case might be made that it is referring to the fictional account. My interpretation is this is one of the three great events of October as judged from the movie Knowing, which had 3 disasters in October. Equally clear is the impossible chronological context. Construction on the Boulder Dam did not start until 1931. The dam was renamed Hoover by the then Secretary of the Interior in 1930, but that name was not final until 1947 when Congress made the name permanent. And yet we find it encoded in a 1927 novel. One last observation about the area of the map of time in which this message appears. Look midway through the message on the left side of the excerpt. You will see on line 6,172 the date of September 6, 1982. September 6 reminding us of the one and only one contemporaneous date seen at any time in the movie San Andreas. Again, remember that date. The Great Hoover Dam blasted by the San Andreas with all water free. As the biblical verse goes, as a wheel within a wheel, there is another message to be created from the above-derived line 6,181. It will be called the San Andreas wheel within the Emma and Ray wheel and will describe San Francisco. But mathematically it does not seem to work quite the same way. This time the predicted line highlights a message, but it is not consistent with the Hoover Dam, originally the Boulder Dam. Rather, the half-interval point, line 3051, gives a date of October 8, 1999, and that month and day is the exact month and day of the October 8, 1865, Great San Francisco earthquake. There have been 2 such earthquakes, one in 1906 and one in 1865. It gets more interesting. The map of time rolls in 84-year half-periods. When I replicate the map of time back 84 years and find line 3051, I find on the right side the correct month and day and on the left side the correct year. On the left side I see 1865, on the right side I see 10/8. Reverse and concatenate them and you have October 8, 1865. The exact date of the 1865 Great San Francisco earthquake. Perhaps an important technique. Now, the message surrounding the area proximate to line 3051. PGE, the logo of Pacific Gas and Electric, has its headquarters at the 34-story building, first occupied in 1971. The building is located at 77 Beale Street, San Francisco, near sea level about 5 blocks from the San Francisco Bay and Pacific Ocean. My interpretation is twofold. As occurred in the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, the Pacific coast of Japan fell by 3 feet in places, so may the land under the PGE building decline. The building, built subject to 1970 earthquake standards, will fall. Secondly, a great surge of water may occur. Perhaps a tsunami. There remains a problem. Line 3051 is the half interval, not the supposed predicted line 3133. Again, there is a recognizable message, but not related to the Hoover Dam. It is a message that relates to time cycles and, not understanding the mathematics involved, I will reserve my thoughts. There are many detailed messages concerning the Hoover Dam, Los Angeles and San Francisco that will not be reviewed for lack of time. Only the above messages related by mathematics are offered. The contribution of the movie, San Andreas, is that it tells us the what and where. Seismic events that will affect the Hoover Dam, Los Angeles and San Francisco. 4 manifest warnings. Perhaps the Bible would say signs. Perhaps Mr. Gann would as well. The above excerpt taken from page 84 follows the discussion of the 266th Pope by 2 pages. W D Gann is giving those of us living in the era of the 266th Pope warnings of coming disasters. There have been 4 recent signs or warnings to date. 3 of the 4 signs have been imperfectly predicted in advance based upon the tunnel and associated fiction. All 4 should be studied and weighed as evidence of the probability of the greater predicted events. February 23, 2016. When first I discovered the encoding of knowing and San Andreas in the tunnel, I was both confused and terrified. During that period I used a variation of the Tau device to project the date February 23, 2016 based on the end dates of the movies Knowing and 2012. Evidence of the latter's inclusion in the tunnel is not reviewed herein, though it does exist. The mathematics of the end dates of these movies is simply the difference in each movie's end date added to the later of the 2 dates. The apocalyptic dates of the 2 movies are October 19, 2009 and December 21, 2012. The interval between the 2 added to the latter of the 2 is February 23, 2016. My concern was so great and understanding at this time so little I could not risk not telling people. I steeled myself to meet with a family member whose daughter lives in San Francisco and son in Seattle. This was not an easy task as he is a minister and holds a doctorate in theology. And me, only recently a Christian and entirely new to studying the Bible through the eyes of W D Gann. I was relieved when a great San Francisco earthquake did not occur on February 23, 2016. My relief ended when I discovered a magnitude 4.9 earthquake occurred on February 23, 2016 at Wasco, California, which was the largest to strike the state in over a year. Where I'd expected a great San Francisco earthquake, what did occur was an earthquake of smaller proportion and 4 hours southeast of San Francisco near Bakersfield. It seemed a coincidence, but a troubling one. The prediction made January 12, 2016 can be found in the essay above. April 14 and 15, 2016. The tunnel's fictional war begins in April 1930 with Japan's declaration of war against the United States. Comparing the timeline of the fictional war against warnings of which I had become convinced would occur, a natural event was predicted to occur in April 2016. Not given an exact date by the tunnel, the midpoint of April 2016 was assumed to be the date. And so it was. On April 14th and April 15th, Japan was rocked by a series of magnitude 6.2 to 7.0 earthquakes, now referred to as the 2016 Kumamoto earthquakes, in which 49 perished. The earthquakes rippled around the Pacific Rim within hours. The United States Pacific coast was quiet. Symbolically, one might consider this event as a declaration of seismic war by Japan against the United States. Coincidental, weak, and hardly convincing. Still, the 2016 Kumamoto earthquakes were troubling. June 10, 2016. Deriving from a scriptural excerpt on page 52 of the Tunnel, a warning event was predicted for the period of June 6 to June 10. When this date interval was identified as concerning, a coincidental event was noted as well. From June 7 to June 10, 2016, the Federal Emergency Management Administration undertook a massive simulation of a Great Cascadia subduction earthquake disaster. The exercise was named Cascadia Rising. On the last day of Cascadia Rising, a magnitude 5.2 earthquake was recorded at Borrego Springs, California. The event was felt to the west of its epicenter in Los Angeles and San Diego. At the time of its occurrence, it was the largest earthquake to strike the lower 48 states of the United States since 2014. The prediction of the June earthquake was first perceived on May 29, 2016 and documented. The ultimate prediction was made on June 8, 2016 and documented. For the record, I'd settled on June 9 after some confusion the above linked essays will display. As it turned out, when adjusted for time zones, the earthquake happened at 4 minutes after midnight on June 9, 10. September 6, 2016. Each warning event to this point, predicted in advance based upon the Tunnel or other linked fiction, has become more severe and the circumstances more accurate. The September 6 event was accurate both in time and, this time, in location. Derived from the movie San Andreas, a warning event was predicted for September 6 at 2:13 p.m. PST. There is one and only one contemporaneous date found in that movie. It is the previously described cell phone shot that occurs as Ray and Emma are talking in the Los Angeles earthquake strikes. The cell phone shot exists for, at most, a second, but it is clear once it is isolated. Exactly 2:13 p.m. PST on September 6. That is the time. Exactly. Further clues and information but derived from the Tunnel, a second battle of the First Allied Enemy Front takes place between El Paso and Brownsville along the Rio Grande. That is the place. There is greater clarification of the place. A message was located on pages 289 and 290. Brownsville to El Paso along the Rio Grande up through the Colorado River is the primary battle line described in the plain narrative of the Tunnel. The encoded message notably adds some detail. The narrative did not say Rio Grande River, only the Rio Grande. The message adds the word rift. The Rio Grande Rift is a fault line beginning at about El Paso following along the eastern portion of the Great Basin. The Rio Grande Rift was thought to be inactive but in 2011 was declared an active fault zone. Additionally, the encoded message contains the words, Pacos City. Brownsville to El Paso to the Rio Grande Rift at Pacos City are signs to the sheep that weakened tectonic plates, yes, do give way. On September 6, 2016 at 3:15 CDT, the United States Geological Service reported the rare event, a magnitude 3.5 earthquake at the Rio Grande Rift. The Rio Grande Rift appears between the blue and yellow arrows and Paco City at the red arrow. Considering the vast majority of the Rio Grande Rift is in the MDT time zone, which is 1 hour removed from PST, the 3:15 p.m. CDT time of the Rio Grande Rift earthquake might well be considered within 2 minutes of the time appearing on Emma's cell phone in San Andreas. This fourth event was very troubling in two respects. First, it was extremely accurate both in time and place. While only a magnitude 3.9 earthquake, earthquakes were described by the USGS as exceedingly rare in the Paco City area. And second is W D Gann's encoded message that, yes, tectonic plates do give way. If the Rio Grande Rift, outlining the eastern border, a tectonic plate fracture, give way, then what immense geologic pressure is being placed on lands to its west? The prediction was made on August 6, 2016 and documented by the Google date stamp on the essay. The further articulated prediction of the Rio Grande Rift was made on September 2, 2015 and documented. Before leaving this warning event and related page, take notice of the narrative appearing on lines 10,848, 10,847 and 10,849. The destruction was the greatest in history, much greater than the earthquake in 1906. Loss of life was terrific. That's 4 manifest warning events found in the tunnel, 3 of which I decoded and published in advance of their occurrence. Each time the time and location becoming seemingly more exact. There may be one more very proximate warning before the predicted period of great disaster. A 5th and proximate future warning. This date and event has been given earlier but most likely went unnoticed. It is the October 14, 2009, midnight EST news report of a fictional Gulf of Mexico oil platform fire occurring at exactly midnight in the movie Knowing. A comparable event is found encoded in 2 messages in the tunnel. Remember, there were not any deaths in that fictional oil platform fire in the movie. Very likely, if this warning manifests, it will be a very minor event as well. But if it occurs, it is the final and a very proximate warning. It will mean, leave the downstream areas of the Hoover Dam, leave Los Angeles and leave San Francisco immediately. Get as far east of those areas as possible. If that warning occurs and if it precedes the first event as it did in the movie Knowing, then, as in the movie, a great event will follow that same day, October 15, 2016, at approximately 3:30 p.m. EST. 15 hours of warning. That is time for a person in San Francisco to load his car and make it to temporary safety. Remembering my background and the origin of my journey was the stock market, I'd long ago found an interval involving the black days of the stock market compelling. I found that too within one day, the interval from Black Thursday or October 24, 1929 to Black Monday or October 19, 1987 was exactly 1/2 the interval from the latter date to October 19, 2016. With this uncanny information, I tried to think like Mr. Gann, the master of the stock markets. If there were an insight to be had, it would be on pages 29 and 58 of the tunnel. And it was there, 2 messages of great importance. I interpret the messages as a final warning. Page 29. This first message identifies the Deepwater Horizon event that occurred on exactly April 20, 2010, highlighted in red above, and a message that identifies the fire that led to that great oil spill. Crude oil leak and sea. This is identified in a book published in 1927. Such prophecy cannot happen in our world of randomness. And on page 58, the second message, leveraging on the truth and prophetic proof of the first, tells us there will be a fire at the Deepwater Atlantis. Deepwater Atlantis set on fire. When I combine that message with the minor fictional Gulf oil platform event that occurs at midnight between October 14th and 15 in the movie Knowing, and which precedes the first of the disasters of the movie, it suggests to me a final warning. A last observation regarding the three near equidistant digits 9 appearing on the page. They are W D Gann's encoded signature and Pythagorean number equivalents. Using the Pythagorean table of letter values, Mr. Gann's first, last and total names sum to 999. Summary of remarkable events predicted to occur in October 2016. Before continuing, a summary of the evidence, clues, logic and derived predictions, prophecies to this point. W D Gann's The Tunnel Through the Air has encoded into it clues that predict remarkable events that are to occur in the wake of the election of the 266th Pope. The tunnel links to contemporary movies that present to an unaware public glimpses of the types of events that may occur and their severity. The movies are the intended warning, but the public is asleep. The tunnel is a mathematical proof of the truth intended for persons of math and science. Forewarning events, predicted in advance, have occurred. February 23, 2016 Wasco earthquake, April 14-15, 2016 Kumamoto earthquakes, June 10, 2016 Barrigo Springs earthquake and September 6, 2016 Pecos City earthquake at the Rio Grande Rift. A fifth warning is expected to occur involving the Atlantis oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico at midnight on October 14-15, 2016. Any person on the southern Pacific coast or downstream of that Hoover Dam at that moment will have just under 16 hours to find safety. If, following the timeline of the movie Knowing, the predicted events will begin with nightfall of October 12, 2016, just as the movie Knowing began on the evening of that day. October 12, 2016 is the holiest of Jewish holidays, Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. The final warning event will occur at midnight between the days October 14 and 15 with the Gulf of Mexico Atlantis event, and the three great disasters will follow. If the nature of the events to occur follows the movie San Andreas, the Hoover Dam will be the first of the three tragic events when it collapses shortly after noon on October 15. The second of the events occurring October 17 will be an earthquake or tsunami. Regarding the third of the events in either chronology, the destruction of San Francisco will be so complete the city will have submerged much as did the mythical continent of Atlantis. Again from page 76. You may recognize the words from page 76. That is the page on which the message, "The seas rose. Low PGE, 77 Beale Street, was lost into deep water." Repetition as a means of emphasizing a point, a prophecy. Focus on the curious statement above in which Mr. Gann says quite matter-of-factly, there is considerable truth in that statement. Is W D Gann attesting from his knowledge that the mythical ancient city of Atlantis does lie below the ocean? I believe he is. Lingering questions. Early on, two questions were posed. I will propose answers in the reverse order of their having first appeared. Is it possible a trader can enter 286 transactions in 25 days and have only 22 losses? Quite simply, no. Ask your grad student son or daughter in business statistics if such is possible given the randomness of the stock market. Hundreds of papers, dissertations and books have been written attesting to the random walk. Modern science believes in randomness. Such a trading record could not have occurred. A person wishing to argue the point is left only allege the collusion of the parties to the Taker and Investment Digest article of December 1909. The argument would be, there was collusion, because this is not possible. The argument would start with the proposition as a given rather than something to be objectively examined. Fair enough. As Marie's disappearance note goes, but more along the biblical wording, according to your faith be it unto you. It's all up to what you choose to believe. Why would the prophet will his and his wife's death? This will take some time and involve a message found in the simple narrative of the tunnel. The hopelessly ideal Robert Gordon, no doubt a proxy for W. D. Gann, loves the Bible, his Marie Stanton, and his country. In the context of this belief in Mr. Gann's character, we look at the symbology of his in Sadie Gann's gravestone once again. A reader of my blog, knowing that I was to travel to Brooklyn on June 21, 2015, made the curious request that I measure the gravestone. And from those measurements came a great mystery. The stone measures 30 by 30 by 8, providing the number 30 times 8 or 240. The combined lifespan of W.D. and Sadie Gann was 77 years plus 53 or 130 years. The difference in years or 240 minus 130 produces a third number, 110. Reckoning from 1776, the year of the Declaration of Independence and the Battle of Brooklyn, plus 240 brings us to 2016. From the 1886 dedication of the Statue of Liberty that can barely viewed from Mr. Gann's gravesite, plus 130 again derives 2016. And from the year of the greatest natural disaster in American history, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, plus 110 gives us 2016. W.D. and Sadie Gann died willing in order to create the mysteries that would lie dormant for decades, with the intention that their answers would be discovered when they were needed most to aid their beloved country. They died willing in order to inform us that 2016 is the year in which remarkable events will begin. The events predicted to occur in October 2016 are only a beginning. It all begins in 2016. Further predictions. There are 432 pages in the tunnel, including covers and blank pages. As has been demonstrated, there might be an encoded message or messages on every page. A message provided by encoded mathematic demonstration, by acrostic tells tick spelling, by anagram, by concept repetition. I do not believe I have decoded a fraction of the tunnel. Following are predictions that I believe will be developed as the decoding and discovery process continues. The election of November 2016 will be deferred. The tunnel contains messages indicating the events of October 2016 will create such chaos along the Pacific coast the present government will declare martial law. Because of the political stakes involved, the present government will defer the election, suspending the Constitution. The United States, founded under God, and according to the vision of Lord Francis Bacon in his New Atlantis, will have ended in 2016, its 240th year. 2016, the 240th year according to the shaman's gravestone. The Cascadia abduction event. The first campaign of the Allied enemy along the Pacific coast is complete with the capture of Portland and Seattle in December 1930. I interpret this to mean the great event inspiring the massive Federal Emergency Management Administration exercise, Cascadia Rising, will occur in December 2016, most likely December 21st or 22. The magnitude of destruction of such an event is described in the Pulitzer Prize-winning 2015 New Yorker article, The Really Big One. In brief, the last such event occurred January 26, 1700, involved a magnitude 9 earthquake and resulted in the northern Pacific coast sinking several feet in minutes. A tsunami that leveled coastal villages in Japan 9 hours later. The Second Allied Enemy Campaign. The fictional Second Allied Enemy Campaign began with an assault initiated from the Gulf of Mexico, traveling up the Mississippi River. A major river battle occurs at Cairo, Illinois. Ultimately, St. Louis is defeated and becomes a staging position from which Chicago is attacked and destroyed. My geologic interpretation of the second campaign is that the Mississippi River, a natural geologic deformation traveling through Cairo and coincident with the New Madrid seismic zone, will create great earthquakes affecting the area and the already seismically unstable fracking fields of Oklahoma. The several cities mentioned in the tunnel from New Orleans to Cairo will be affected. Moreover, the events of the first campaign and the seismic events occurring at Cairo, Illinois will create such geologic damage and turmoil that areas somewhat between the Pacific and Cairo will become involved. The Great Yellowstone Caldera will erupt. Within the zone of Yellowstone caldera ash, Chicago will be severely affected. The tunnel indicates the Grady city of Chicago will be destroyed. One would think the misspelled word Grady has an unintentional Y added. I disagree. I believe the misspelling was intentional and the word gray is intended. It is the Gray City of Chicago. It is covered in volcanic ash. A great invention. For the moment, we will borrow from the last prediction, the anagram, God Reborn 269 or September 26th. There will be a great invention that will enable good people who are aware of the signs to avoid danger and live productive and meaningful lives. It will be an invention having a character of theoretic mathematics and physics, relying on the biblical principle of history repeating itself down to the smallest reflections of repetition and vibration. I do not expect the invention to be a tunnel through the air, but a tunnel through time. Knowing details of the future so people can avoid danger and live safely. Robert Gordon. Out of the turmoil a great hero will emerge who will reform the United States and gain leadership of the world. As the anagram of the names on the gravestone of W D and Sadie Gann form a meaningful message, as the anagram of Marie Stanton form a meaningful image of a philosophy of life and death, so the name of the hero of the tunnel forms an anagram of a meaningful message and prediction. God Reborn 269. The 269th day of the year is September 26th. Suspecting Mr. Gann's penchant for creating a message at the end of a suggested trail, might there be further confirmation on page 269? Indeed, the first line of that chapter and that page is September 26th. You will also realize that the number 269 is a clever arrangement of the month and year of 926. I will leave it to your imagination to complete the thought. Do keep in mind the message of W D and Sadie Gann's gravestone. It all begins in 2016. What is a miracle? When once I Googled that word for a definition, I received the following in the search results. I regret I cannot provide but a thimbleful of the things that I have seen or computed in the last 2 years of discovery. I regret that I have discovered so little of the predictions and knowledge of W D Gann to this point. Yet, I am profoundly changed by my work. On my last journey to Mr. Gann's grave, November 15, 2015, my objective was to determine whether there was a gravestone that would complete an unusual configuration of 12 stones that seemed to create a greater triangle. It would be a 13th stone, the apex of the imagined gravestone triangle, and it would be beneath and obscured by the great tree. This is an image of the number 12 stones, which forms a unique triangular configuration among the other stones of Greenwood Cemetery. You can see and sense the set-apart nature of these 12 stones in Google Earth and when amidst them on the ground. My projection of the 13th stone is formed by the light blue vectors. That day, my daughter snapped a picture of me standing beneath and downhill of the great tree moments before I called her and her husband to join me in looking at the stone that was, in fact, below the great tree and, in theory, at the apex of the other 12 stones forming a triangle. The stone was askew on its base. It was a good 15 degrees separated from square relative to the base. The stone had been moved. I asked my son-in-law, a bull of a 36-year-old former Naval Academy sprint football lineman, could we, if we tried, move the upper die of the 13th stone back to a square position on its pedestal? We did not believe we could, and we could not find any markings on the stone to indicate it had been so dislodged by equipment. You cannot reproduce such a personal experience that happened to me. Perhaps you don't believe me, but you can download the W D Gann map of time that I have linked for Dropbox download for free, and you can replicate the many experiments that I have documented in my associated blog, Market Time and Price Town Hall. You can reproduce many incredible mathematic and verbal messages, a mere few having been provided above. Miracles of mathematics and of prediction. Except, there isn't time for those living in the Pacific Coast region of Southern California. By the time this essay is posted and translated into a planned YouTube video essay, there will be 7 days to October 12th. For those in Portland and Seattle, there will be under 3 months until December 21st and 22. We will all be affected by the events of October 2016, but those first. Each progressive event will be yet one greater message for everyone else. The lamentation of page 130 distills the reality which W D Gann foresaw. It is the warning of judgment about which Rabbi Jonathan Cahn would write in 2010, some 83 years after Mr. Gann encoded the concept into the tunnel. Each progressively greater disaster will continue until judgment is complete. I call the point of the following paragraphs, the Professor Koestler dilemma. Professor Koestler of knowing progressively discovers the meaning of his map of time and asks, why was I given this message if I cannot save the world? The answer comes in the final scene as Professor Koestler reunites with and embraces his estranged father, the Reverend Koestler, and as they await the few seconds before the imminent end of the world. Reverend Koestler, the father comforts his son, "This is not the end, my son." Professor Koestler, the son and previously the doubter, responds, "I know." The dilemma is twofold. Imagining a vastly improbable prediction that might affect millions, does one risk humiliation and run through the streets proclaiming its imminence? This presentation is my answer. But that's me. I prefer the humiliation of being wronged in preference to the alternate of having done nothing should my interpretations be proven true. And second, What do we each choose to believe? From Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, The Oversoul.
The soul is the perceiver and revealer of truth. We know truth when we see it. Let skeptic and scoffer say what they choose. Foolish people ask you, when you have spoken what they do not wish to hear, how do you know it is truth, and not an error of your own? We know truth when we see it, from opinion, as we know when we are awake that we are awake. It was a grand sentence of Emanuel Swedenborg, which would alone indicate the greatness of that man's perception. It is no proof of a man's understanding to be able to confirm whatever he pleases, but to be able to discern that what is true, and that what is false is false. This is the mark and character of intelligence.
Who was W. D. Gann? Who was this man, W. D. Gann? Perhaps he told us, of course, in veiled language and meaning. If you were attentive, you saw a coincidence in which the message, God Reborn 269, may have been confirmed by the occurrence of the September 26 date of birth on page 269. Do we have a new method? Perhaps a number gives us a trail in the map of time which, when we follow it, we find confirmation of intended meaning? Assume that is a method for the moment. Let's try it with W. D. Gann. We have a number for W. D. Gann. Mr. Gann's Pythagorean number, previously derived as 69. If you are a student of the tunnel, you know the great importance researchers have placed on page 69. Indeed, an entire book on trading methodology involving the golden rule or fee has recently been written about the scriptural context of that page. The Book of Jonah, one excerpt of scripture on page 69, and the personal reflection of Robert Gordon. Only the sign of the prophet Jonas. Robert Gordon, W. D. Gann, knows the key to the interpretation of the future and how to apply it. Perhaps a message encoded on that page might color and confirm for us the simple narrative which might identify W. D. Gann. God asks Jonas to warn men of sin, lead atonement.
And it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month, that one had escaped out of Jerusalem came unto me, saying, The city is smitten. And when this cometh to pass, lo, it will come, then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them.
Thank you for considering this information.